Watch this.
We could not have prosecuted this case in Idaho.
That's because Idaho has yet to add the words to its Human Rights Act. So they took the case to federal court, and now an Oregon man will go to prison for his hate crimes against Idaho's LGBTQ community.
I think this year we just had more bites than we usually have had.
November elections usually mean a lot. For voters in Canyon County, though, it has usually meant long lines at the polls. But not this year. They're finally adding more precincts to help move things along.
And all of a sudden they were involved in the building of this huge structure.
The Nez Perce tribe welcomed Christianity with open arms, and with it, they helped raise Idaho's oldest building. But that would also lead them to losing their homeland. I look back at Idaho's Cataldo mission. It began about a year ago with a broken window. Then someone burned a pride flag in Boise's North End. Days later, there was a report of a man who tried to run over 2 women with his car after threatening them with homophobic slurs. That man, Matthew Lehigh, was arrested on October 12th of last year, and by January, he was charged with several federal hate crimes. Today, Lehigh's victims are getting some closure. A federal judge sentenced Matthew Lehigh to 37 months in prison with 3 years of parole to follow that. Lehigh, well, he owned up to 2 of his crimes, pleading guilty to 2 felony counts. One was punching a transgender employee at a library and threatening to stab them, a violation of the Federal Hate Crimes Prevention Act. The other was for trying to run over those 2 women, Lehigh assumed to be lesbian. That charge was vehicular assault, but as part of his plea deal, Lehigh admitted to several more anti-LGBTQ+ crimes and attacks, crimes that he couldn't be charged with in the state of Idaho. Here's Andrew Bartline.
Some have a lot to say after becoming the victim of a crime. October 3rd, 2022, someone vandalized the community center.
Blows her sense of security. And all the various groups who come to that space are affected by it. I was devastated.
Judy Cross is on the board.
Confused, wondering who could have done that. Why would they do that?
That same day, just hours apart, a North End couple fell victim to this.
Y'all, this is our progress flag.
Or at least it was.
It was quite a traumatic experience.
Both Brett Perry and his husband.
I actually noticed it the next day, so it had been hanging up all night.
Another targeted victim of a hate crime.
I reported it immediately.
With more documentation to follow.
I am part of the LGBTQ+ community. It's not like we were holding hands or anything.
More targeted attacks.
Nobody else should be able to dictate your own happiness.
Vegas Alessandra.
First and foremost.
She was nearly struck.
And
a driver targeting her with their car. It took weeks to connect the dots back to Matthew Lehigh, a 32-year-old man from Oregon.
Our office prosecuted him for those under the federal hate crimes laws.
Idaho U.S. Attorney Josh Hurwitz organized a plea deal leading to the sentencing today.
Mr. Lehigh was sentenced to 37 months incarceration.
There's a lot to say.
Like weight was just taken off my shoulders.
But Lehigh's victims are more focused on what's been left unsaid.
Sexual orientation and gender identity, just those 4 words.
Without them, the state of Idaho does not recognize the LGBTQ+ community as a protected class.
We could not have prosecuted this case in Idaho.
These Idahoans have to lean on federal law to see justice in their own state.
And finally, someone listened, someone picked up the issue, someone identified the crime as something that they could follow through with and make a difference.
Lehigh was diagnosed with schizophrenia after his arrest. The judge even called his sentencing today an intervention. Lehigh's defense pushed the narrative that Lehigh is not an example of hate, but rather an example of mental illness. His lawyer showed examples of Lehigh getting exposed to what they would call societal problems or things going on in pop culture. BLM, for example, that Black Lives Matter movement, Brian. Well, when that was going down, he was taking what he's seeing on TV and in the world and acting it out himself.
Okay.
Where he started becoming racist, where his childhood friends, one who is even black, said, I don't know him to be racist. I think somebody connected to his family had ALS at one point. he started acting as if he had ALS. So he is now getting medication. Judy Cross, one of the women we talked to, who's part of the community center, that building that was vandalized, she said the man she saw in court today was not the man that she had seen previously. It seems that there's a lot of sympathy from the victims toward Mr. Lehigh and what he's gone through.
Interesting. That's good to see. About the community center, has that been put back together?
I know it was thousands of dollars in damages, and part of what was decided in his sentencing today, he's going to have to pay that money back, and it doesn't seem like it's going to happen very quickly.
I mean, how does somebody pay off something while they're in prison?
There's like $25 a month installments. There's options, but yeah, it might take some time.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Andrew. You know, salt and pepper, peanut butter and jelly, Batman and Robin, some things just kind of, go together. A local pairing on Election Day tends to be 2C elections and long lines. So as Canyon County voters are planning for what snacks they might want to take along with them to stand in line next Tuesday, well, keep this in mind. You may not need them. There's a new plan of action for Canyon County elections. Joe Paris tells us how they hope to shorten the election wait time.
Long lines on Election Day, they can happen. The good news is that people are voting. The not so good, it's the waiting. Canyon County has worked to make a major change to prevent lines like these coming up on November 7th.
Yeah, for sure. We were able to secure 37 polling locations for this election out of 44 precincts.
Joe Decker is a spokesperson for the 2C. He says that the move to 37 polling locations is certainly a change this election season.
I think a lot of people remember to maybe the November election during the pandemic when we only had 13 polling places open. So go to 13 to 37 is a significant increase. And then I had our elections office pull some numbers, and in May of last year we had 21. November of last year we had 27. So we're up even 10 over last year's November election.
What was, I guess, the catalyst to creating 37 polling locations? Was it community feedback?
Well, we're always looking to expand polling locations, and I think this year we just had more bites than we usually have had. And we've got a better relationship through one of our commissioners, worked with some of the school districts that allowed us back in. In the past, they didn't really like us there, but they've decided to allow us back in, so that really helps. I think the Hispanic Cultural Center was one of them that we were able to secure. We're also having early voting there. So yeah, I mean, I think just a better reception from the community and more work on our elections office.
Another thing that needs to increase, poll workers. And the scale of it all, it translates to other changes too.
We're hoping to have about 380. We have close to 300. So we're pretty staffed up. The one thing that I guess the lack of poll numbers is going to stop this year is we're not going to have curbside voting at all our polling locations, where in the past we did have curbside voting at all our polling locations. But on the other hand, all 37 of our polling locations are ADA compliant. And sometimes that hasn't always been the case, which was part of the reason we offered that curbside vote.
I know the big question will be, does the county expect this to, I guess, translate to shorter lines on Election Day?
Well, we certainly hope so. We've had, the 2 weeks early voting that we've really been pushing. Same with absentees. So the more people that vote early, the more absentees we get, the more lines, or the smaller the lines will be. But yeah, with 37 over 27, I mean, there's almost essentially one polling location per precinct. So it should hopefully cut down on the long line.
So with a lot more polling locations, there's always the chance that your traditional polling location or a spot that you voted in the past, it could have changed. So to combat that, if you're curious, you can go on to the Canyon County election site. And if you go through here, you'll actually be able to go through where your voting location is and what's on your ballot, similar to our friends in Ada County. You can take a look here. Let's just pretend I live on Main Street, Caldwell. That's what I put in. It tells me right away, okay, my polling location's the O'Connor Field House. And also on the website, again, you can take a look at some of the sample ballots, some of the things that are expected to be the big issues that are here. So, Brian, it's a change that we'll be taking a look at on election night. I know our team always follows the lines, and it'll be interesting to see if this makes a difference.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe. We'll keep tabs on that going into next week. All right. Well, more court proceedings, a historical photography exhibit, 45th anniversary celebration. Here's more. 411 with Sophia Bliss.
Brian Koberger, the man accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students last year, was back in a Lehigh County courtroom this morning. Court records show Koberger's defense team is raising concerns about how police built a family tree and linked him to the DNA on the knife sheath found at the crime scene on King Road in Moscow. The defense says they need the information to help prepare for their case, but the prosecution argues they didn't use IgG to obtain any warrants, and they're concerned unknown relatives' identities will be made public if the genetic genealogy gets out there. After today's hearing, the judge gave the state until December 1st to turn over all the genetic genealogy evidence they've obtained so far. Once he reviews it, he will decide what, if anything, the defense will have access to. Kohberger's trial date has not been set. A former Caldwell police sergeant will be heading to trial after he pleaded not guilty to 8 federal charges in U.S. District Court this morning. 41-year-old Ryan Bendewald is accused of sexually abusing women and trading sex and sexual favors for favorable police treatment while he was an officer with CPD. A U.S. magistrate judge set his jury trial for Monday, January 8th. A grand jury indicted Bendewald on 3 counts of deprivation of rights under color of law and 5 counts of federal program bribery a few weeks ago. The indictment alleges these crimes happened between 2017 and 2021 and states Bendewald abused his position as a law enforcement officer to engage in unlawful sexual conduct with at least 7 members of the public through bribery and sexual assault. If convicted of the 2 deprivation of rights charges involving aggravated sexual abuse, Bendewald faces up to life in prison. 7 Investigates first reported these allegations in March of 2022 as the FBI investigated Bendewald and other Caldwell officers. Bendewald resigned from Caldwell PD in November of 2021.
And I want to share their stories about the war, not talk about the war that they were in.
And that's exactly what photographer Shane Sato did with his World War II veterans exhibit focusing on Japanese American veterans. This exhibit is called Go for Broke: Portraits of Legacy. It's open right now at the Albertsons Library at the university until February 18th of next year. And tonight, you can meet Shane at the artist reception at 6 p.m. at the library.
I didn't have a background in business, which became very apparent after I opened.
And yet, the Record Exchange has stayed in business 45 years through 3 recessions, the shift from vinyl to cassettes, CDs, digital, then streaming, and now back to records. And tonight there is a celebration at the Record Exchange for the retirement of former owners Michael and Jill and 45 years of keeping the Record Exchange's culture alive.
In here, the politics were washed away. And in here, it was about a passion.
The free public party starts right after the 208 at 5:30 as part of First Thursday. There will be live music, free beer, and raffles. Be aware, you do need a wristband to get in. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Sophia Bliss.
Well, the month of November is known nationally as Native American History Month. It's when we're supposed to celebrate Native American history and culture, traditions, languages, and the stories. Idaho has 5 nationally recognized tribes: the Shoshone-Bannock, the Shoshone-Paiute, the Coeur d'Alene, the Kootenai, and the Nez Perce. The Nez Perce, well, they weren't the first tribe Lewis and Clark encountered in Idaho on their way west, but they were the tribe that made sure the expedition continued after the Corps Discovery crews wandered into North Idaho hungry and cold. It's kind of a culture of the Nez Perce, welcoming, which is exactly how they reacted to the arrival of the Catholic priest in the 1840s. Together, they would build the Cataldo Mission, which is Idaho's oldest standing building, and that was completed 170 years ago in 1853. Exploring Idaho visited there in 1995 and is today's 208 redial.
It's not that long ago. It's not that long ago that this country was a wild country.
All this area in here, this is where our people roam these hills, and just being here, you can feel the spirits where people are still here.
In the mountains of North Idaho, it's a day to remember. Like ancestors before them, members of the Coeur d'Alene tribe drum and dance a celebration. Modern-day warriors, the tribe's elders, and the youngest generation are all here to mark the coming of the Catholics.
They had this ancient medicine man chief in the 1700s who had a vision, and his power was a raven who could circle and tell him about coming events.
Circling Raven looked to the sky and saw the coming of a man in a black robe, a man with a new medicine power, a new religion. Father Peter DeSmet fulfilled that vision almost 150 years later. His arrival in the West elated the Coeur d'Alenes. The entire tribe converted to Christianity. In 1843, DeSmet was joined by Father Joseph Rivalli, and by the year 1850, the missionaries and the Indians completed a massive monument to their faith.
It was very labor-intensive.
Jim Boyle is a park interpreter at the Cataldo Mission. He says the entire building was constructed by hand.
No nails, no spikes.
The timbers that support the structure were cut from whole trees. The Coeur d'Alenes cut them with a handheld axe. They were joined together with wooden pegs to form a skeleton for the building.
Most of them probably had never even seen a log cabin, and they had not seen buildings. And all of a sudden, they were involved in the building of this huge structure back in 1850. It must have been really an awesome experience for them to be part of.
Father Thomas Connolly says the Coeur d'Alenes labored with passion for their new God. Families worked together, building the walls with willow branches, grasses, and mud.
145 years ago, these were the actual fingerprints made by an individual that was working here. Left them for us to see and know that they were here.
Slowly, the rough outline of a building became a church.
May the Lord be with you. And also with you. Let us pray.
Today, a special Catholic Mass gives thanks for the Coeur d'Alenes who found the strength to complete the mission.
This was a symbol of the faith and dedication of a small tribal people who had resisted every other change.
This is sacred ground here for the Coeur d'Alenes, has been since time immemorial, these grounds right here.
After the Mass, Coeur d'Alene leader Cliff Sijon walks with his family through the mission cemetery.
This is part of my family, is the strength of the black robes.
But Sijon says the story of the Cataldo Mission is also a story of sadness.
When a wagon train would come in here, or a bunch of immigrants would come in here starving to death, who fed them was the Innu people. We opened our arms up to them, and it turned out to be the same people that kicked us out of here.
In 1889, the Coeur d'Alenes were forced to sell this land and the mission. They moved to a small reservation to the south. Today, they come back to drum and dance on this land that was once theirs.
We are here today to share the goodness of this earth and the goodness of our hearts with everyone.
Their celebration honors ancestors who roamed these mountains, who lived in teepees under the trees, and who met their new religion with enthusiasm and strength.
You ask me, what significance does Hill have? It has a lot for us to come back to. It gives us a sense of this is still ours.
Well, 2 years after its completion, the Treaty of 1855 was the first of many treaties to take land and freedom away from the Nez Perce, the Ninipu, culminating in the Nez Perce War of 1877, and then you heard about that Treaty of 1889. The Cataldo Mission underwent extensive restoration over the years following in the 1920s and then the 1950s, and by 1962, it was designated a National Historic Landmark. It's also known as the Mission of the Sacred Heart, and it's open daily. You can find it just east of Coeur d'Alene.
Well, we started off our Thursday with wet weather, and we are ending our Thursday with wet weather. It was a warm front this morning. This afternoon's rain is being triggered by an approaching cold front. Temperatures at 50 degrees in Boise right now. Very light winds out of the southeast at 5 miles per hour. You can see the connector and the wet streets, and it's been slow going for the last couple of hours as well. Visibility has been limited because of the mist out there and the rain and the low clouds. So maybe just plan a little extra time if you are headed out and about in the next couple of hours. So far today, this is a rain that has fallen a quarter inch or so across nearly all of the Treasure Valley. 4/10 of an inch up in McCall, about 1900ths in Stanley. Nothing measurable yet in the Magic Valley, but the rain is just now starting to move into the Twin Falls area from the west. So that will change over the next few hours. The other thing that will happen over the next few hours is that this round of rain will taper off. So I think our Friday is actually looking pretty good. We may have some fog in the morning, though. That's because winds will stay light overnight. So I think by 7 or 8 o'clock tonight, the rain tapers off. Temperatures hold steady around 50 degrees for most of the evening because of the cloud cover, only dropping down to the mid-40s. So not much in the way of a temperature swing overnight. Clouds will start to clear away tomorrow, and so we'll see some sunshine Friday afternoon, a high of 60 degrees. We were just talking in studio about the Halloween decorations outside. Tomorrow will be the day to get them down if they're dry enough, as by Saturday, we start seeing another round of rain. It will stay rain up to about 7,000 feet on Saturday. So this is a rain event even for our mountain valley locations. Temperatures will hit the upper 50s on Saturday with off and on rain throughout the day. Rain persists into Sunday morning, a little break late Sunday, then the rain returns for Monday and Tuesday.
All right, let's get to your comments. Blair has something to say about Matthew Lehigh getting sentenced on federal charges and not Idaho state charges. As we turn our clocks back an hour this weekend, let's hope Idaho doesn't continue to turn them back years and years. In 2023, Idaho is too great for hate. Live and let live and love, says Blair, in relation to not adding the words into the state code. The website says online voter registration is closed. Is there a way I could register before the election? No, but you can register on Election Day at your polling place. Bring the proper identification, and you can get it done there. We'll see you tomorrow.